Okay, so now that we have our Hello World program, let's just look at it a little closer, see what's actually going on. So we've got this console word, and then we've got log, and it's separated by a period. So you're going to see that period a lot. It's basically saying find more stuff inside of console. So if I actually type out console and then period, there's all these different things that I can access. So I'm going to look for the log function because that's the one that I want to use. And then I'm going to need some brackets. Now the reason that it needs brackets is, let's say I didn't have those. Let's say I wanted to log the number 2 like that, but I got rid of the brackets, so I just did log 2. Well, what it's actually doing now is it's saying console dot, and it's looking for log 2, which doesn't make sense. There's no function called log 2. So we want to do console.log, and then the brackets means anything inside here is the message that we're printing out. So that's going to let us write a number. We can do a string. We can do decimals, whatever, right? But it's basically saying put a message inside of these brackets. So we've got that. Let's just get rid of that for now. And then you can start to see these semicolons popping up. So that is, it has nothing to do with console log. It's a very general programming term. So the semicolon is actually, it's like a period in most languages. It's saying that we're coming to a stop. It's the end of the sentence. It's the end of the statement. So how the computer actually reads code is it's just going to put everything on one line. So maybe RU, and let's even do another one here. Let's do a response. Let's say not, whoops, what are we doing here? Console.log, not bad. There we go. So we've actually got the console log function 3 different times. So 1, 2, 3. So it's actually separated by these semicolons. And even though you might think it's all going to run on one line, it's going to space it out just like before. So you can see here we got the spaces down below. Now the reason for that is that whenever the computer comes to these semicolons, they're realizing that it's the end of sentence and to move on to something different. So in this case, it's going to put it on a different line, regardless of how it's spaced up here. So the spacing is really just for us. This looks a lot neater and it's a lot easier to read. So that's just a style choice. It's not going to affect how the program is run. It's just going to look a lot better when you're reading the code. So you're going to see a lot of that when you're coding and we're learning new concepts, is that sometimes it doesn't have to look that way, but it's just kind of the common practice. So for instance, whenever you're console logging messages, you're usually just going to do them one after the other. So that's kind of a common style choice to do. So we've got that. We've got our messages. Let's go over comments. So what a comment is it's just a way to put a note inside of here. So let's say I want to write a quick little note to myself. I say displaying messages. That's actually going to treat that as code because it's out in the open there. So it's trying to understand that. It's highlighting. It says I don't understand what you're trying to do. So the way you're going to do a comment is you're just going to put 2 forward slashes. So you can see the color is actually going to change depending on your color scheme. It'll be something different. And that's called a comment. So a comment is really just a little note to yourself that you put inside the code. So I can put this wherever I want. So I can put it over here. I can put it here. But if I put it on the same line, so let's say I pasted it there, it's going to keep commenting and comment the rest of the line out. So you don't want to do that. So basically anywhere except in front of code that you want to run. So that's a good way just to leave a little note. So let's say later I come back, I forget what I was doing. I could just say displaying messages, kind of like a little header here. And I can just read that. It's in plain English, and then I'll remember what I was doing down below. So another really good trick for this is you can put that in front of a line of code and it's going to cancel it out. So now the computer is treating this as a note to myself, so it's just going to discard it. It's not going to run. It's not going to run it when it runs the program. So even though this is like proper code, since it has these forward slashes, it's going to completely cancel out. So it's a good little trick. Let's say I didn't want this message right now, but I'm going to want it later. I can just save that. I can press play. Okay, I got my 2 messages. And then let's say I want to bring it back. All I have to do is that. So it's a good way to get rid of code and bring it back without having to erase it and, save it somewhere else. Now let's say I wanted to get rid of all 3 of these messages, or let's say just the last 2. I could do that, should be perfectly fine. And another option is I could do a multi-line comment. So a multi-line comment is going to be /*, and then go to the end, */. So I could print another message down here, and it's going to start running again. So this is good if you have a whole bunch of code that you want to get rid of for a second. Maybe it's causing you some issues and you're just troubleshooting. You can just stick these little markers here on the front and end, and it's going to disable it for the time being. And again, it's very easy to get rid of that, and it becomes code again. So just a neat little trick. You could also just use that for a note. So maybe you want to write a message to yourself. So after this, I want to do something, and then we will add, I don't know. So I'm just writing a message to myself in here, and it makes it a little easier. You can just hit return and do a longer message. So that's comments. Don't worry about how many you have in there, especially when you're learning. Put as many as you want. The computer is just going to throw them out before it runs the program, so it's not going to affect performance at all. So the computer just completely ignores them. They're just for you and anyone else reading your code. So if you are working with other people, it's nice to have these little messages and just kind of telling them what you're doing. You might write out some code and then come back to it a month later, and even though you wrote it, you're probably going to start forgetting what you were doing. So rather than having to go through and kind of decipher it all, you can just leave a message for yourself and you'll remember. And if you're working in a team, the same thing, right? Someone can just see that message and they're saying, okay, that's generally speaking what they're trying to do here, and they'll understand your code a lot better. So comments are really handy. You can use them for a lot of different stuff. So just notes, kind of these little headers here, just to tell what's going on, or you can even use it to temporarily disable something. So in terms of style, we have these hard rules, right? This is a hard rule here. I have to have that period after log. If I do that, it's something different. It's not going to work. If I just randomly get rid of a quotation mark, it's going to start to highlight. It's not happy. Those are hard rules. You can't just go ahead and change that. But there are kind of style rules, right? Like I could technically do that, and it's going to work okay. So as far as the computer's concerned, that's going to run fine, and it works. But there are kind of style choices that people generally do, so you're normally not going to see that kind of thing. So it is common practice just to put them on different lines. So we'll see a lot of that while we code. There's going to be these hard rules, like with these brackets, stuff that you have to have. There's going to be kind of just general practices that people are going to do a lot, and you're usually going to want to keep to those, just so that if you're ever sharing your code, it's going to be easy for people to read. So that's just kind of style. We've got a basic command there. We're just putting in some comments. We're just spacing it out, just playing around with the different ways that you can line up code. So let's end the video there.